Olá pessoal, eu sou André Miceli e esse é o Aces. Esse é um episódio um pouco diferente. Eu estive recentemente no MIT e fui até o escritório do professor Hal Abelson para uma entrevista. O professor Hal Abelson, entre outras coisas, é um dos inventores da linguagem Logo e do App Inventor. Convido você a acompanhar essa conversa e ficar por dentro das ideias de uma das mentes mais influentes do mundo da tecnologia.
I'll tell a little bit of your story.
Okay, sure.
So, Professor, as I said, I'd like to hear first which you think what the main reasons for App Inventor to make this success and to have almost 70 million apps developed on the platform.
Well, there's the motivation behind App Inventor. I actually started App Inventor when I was on sabbatical at Google in 2007. So things people don't realize is the iPhone actually came out in 2007. So, think about that. Before 2007, there really weren't actually any smartphones. A little bit of some experimental stuff. But the notion that there were smartphones that people could use, that there would be all of this applications, has just started. 2007, not that many years ago. And so one of the things that becomes obvious when you think about it is that there's enormous power and enormous opportunities to do things with this technology. Now, I come from a background, when I was first a graduate student at MIT, with a computer experiment and language called Logo, right, which started in 1969, which had the idea, what we used to say in the Logo project in MIT in 1970s, was computers are for kids. And of course, in the 70s, a computer cost $1 million, and computers were actually for large corporations and defense industries. And here we were at MIT saying, computers are for kids. So when the smartphone came out, I said, well, maybe it's time to resurrect this idea, and maybe what's going on is smartphones are for kids. And that was almost as crazy an idea as saying computers were for kids in 1970. But there's still the idea that what you want to do with this very powerful technology is give it to kids. And that's the motivation behind App Inventor, that there's tremendous sense of wonder and creativity that kids have. Partly the sense of wonder and ability to be creative and do things, but also that this is the world they're going to live in. So even in 2007, when the iPhone first came out, it was obvious that this was going to be a big thing, and that people would be having to deal with the implications of this. Stuff they could use, something they would be affected by. And now the question is, why isn't the same thing true for kids? So the idea of App Inventor was we make it possible for kids or anyone to start building these apps, even though they weren't going to be professional programmers, or maybe not programmers at all, maybe they've not studied it. But you want to take this technology and open it to everyone. And that's the real idea behind App Inventor. And that was true in 2007. And it's true now with the new round of technology. Because, everyone knows now that there are all kinds of wonderful things happening with mobile applications. But what they're not saying so much is, what does that mean that kids can do? What does that mean that an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old can do? And that's the guiding force behind the way we started App Inventor, and what's going to happen with it and where it's going.
Very, very cool. And what were the main challenges at the beginning?
Well, at the very beginning, I'm not sure it was a challenge. It was sort of saying, people taking it seriously that you could do something. So there was this notion of, we were originally working inside Google. So Google supported us as a tiny research project of maybe 3-4 people initially. And everyone said, oh, that's nice. You can make something for mobile apps for kids. At that point, Google was very interested in Android because Android had just been introduced. And they were very open about things that could be done with Android. And we said, oh, well, maybe the things you can do with Android is kids can make Android apps. So we got a lot of support from Google for that. But that was, again, App Inventor was was small. We had, over the first 4 years, there was a Google App Inventor, and it maybe had 16,000 users. So it wasn't a really big serious thing, other than a nice idea. And then eventually, that got moved from Google to MIT. And our initial fear was when we moved it to MIT is that it would die because no one would be interested in it. Because at least when it was Google, people could say it was Google, and now it's just an MIT thing. But that kind of was simultaneous with the real interesting growth in mobile apps, because what you know is at about that time, the experience of everyone in computing was just utterly transformed by the use of this technology. And that was about the time we started releasing MIT App Inventor, and people saw it and said, gosh, this is an interesting thing and there's real potential here. So instead of our fear that it would just die, it's been growing and growing and growing. And now, most of App Inventor is done from our server that we run out of the research group here at MIT CSAIL. And we have 1 million users a month who are using App Inventor, which is starting to become an enormous thing. 1 million a month, 8 million this year, and something like 16, 20 million apps since we launched MIT App Inventor in 2010. But it's just growing and growing and growing enormously.
Is it possible to do something, Professor, in order to democratize more the use of App Inventor? You guys have a partnership with Tech Innovation.
That's right.
And it is very important for young women entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
They are, trying to generate solutions with it.
Right.
What kind of thing can be done in that sense?
To expand it more?
Yeah, into other minorities, to poor countries, things like that.
Yeah, well, Tech Innovation, of course, is really focused on women and women entrepreneurship, which is marvelous. They do a fantastic job. And then the question is, well, what are the other communities? What are the other places? What are places where they're either disadvantaged? There are minorities who are disempowered, who don't do things. There are cultures which really have not been affected by the digital revolution. And there just aren't places where you think there's this idea of kids ought to be able to use this stuff, even though you know that the culture is going to be affected by this. So it's not that kids are going to grow up to be computer programmers or do computing or something, is that they're going to be living in a world where they need to understand the impact of this technology on them. So that's the tremendous opportunity, both for Tech Innovation, which is about women, and for App Inventor, I think, which is trying to do this broadly. And again, the challenges in doing this, one is the culture that people need to understand that it is possible. And one is simply saying to individual kids, look, you're in this technology which you may not have thought of, which is alien, which you look at as doing things to you. Look, you can be empowered to make something. If you want something you think you can do, well, you could actually make that. You and your friends could make that. So that's one thing. And of course, when you get into it more seriously, there's an enormous need for teacher training. That's probably the largest thing. So even in a school system and a country where they recognize the importance of this, the teachers are overburdened. The teachers aren't trained. There's no certification. There are no standards. So it's an enormous job. Even though many people think it's important and necessary, but it's still an enormous job. And when you think about App Inventor and the things like it, that's really the largest challenge. It's how do how do you get the teachers to the point where it's not only that the kids are empowered, it's that the teachers feel empowered to do this and help their kids do it.
Yeah, that's probably it's going to be a huge opportunity for some organizations to train and to make these professors able to teach and to empower those kids and those minorities.
Yeah, that's exactly. We're hoping to do something from MIT. MIT I think has the standards and the credibility to do something like that. That's easy to say, but then you really have to do it.
Of course. Probably it's a good opportunity for us in Brazil to find other institutions and other organizations that can spread the knowledge and work with
that's right.
Yeah,
yeah, we've done a little bit in App Inventor, even in Brazil. We worked with maybe it's called the C6 Bank, right? So they actually worked with us for 1 year and did some limited teacher training. But I think that project stopped after a year. We have to go back to them and say, is there an opportunity to do something? But you need an organization like that, which actually has the power to do something that could be at scale. So again, as we started that, I think it was 2 years ago, but it only lasted a year. And it's partly because of COVID and partly because of things. We have to look at that again and see if there's more interest and if it's possible for them to do something.
They have some alumni at C6 Bank from MIT. Probably it's a good reason for that approach.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing. Going through MIT alumni is a very, very good way to make those initial links.
Definitely. Very interesting. And is it possible to understand what are the characteristics of the countries where App Inventor is most used? Can you find something between those countries and those regions where App Inventor it makes success?
App Inventor right now is in, I think, 195 countries.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to generalize what's going on. The top. I think the U.S. is slightly less than half of App Inventor use, and here I'm talking about our server at MIT. Right. So other large ones. Mexico is a very large user. Spain is a very large user. Taiwan is a very large user, and those tend to be the top couple of them. Certainly a lot in India. But it's not possible to generalize, I don't think, just because there's so many. A lot of what makes App Inventor work are individual teachers or individual school systems that say we want to do this, and then it grows from that. But App Inventor is a very, very, bottom up effort. So people hear about it, they start, a teacher gets interested, a school system gets interested, and sometimes, like the C6 Bank, an organization gets interested in. But I don't even know how to generalize.
We have to put Brazil on that list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you have to put Brazil on that list.
We are going to the end, Professor. How do you think App Inventor will deal with those new technologies that are arising, like blockchain, AI, and things like that?
It's an easy question. Because you say, how do you think those new technologies will interact with computing? And then you can just reel them off. So there's a whole movement that these days is called Internet of Things, which says, how does computing deal with physical devices and hook to them? And it's not easy, but that infrastructure is already there. From the point of view of App Inventor, for technology, all you need to do is make an interface that lets you use App Inventor's block structure to talk to these devices. That's actually pretty easy to do. And then, of course, the challenge is always making things that are worth doing and doing curriculum. So, one of our first projects we're about to put out is using App Inventor to interact with temperature sensors. So that's easy to say, but then the question is, okay, what's that mean to kids? What can they do with that? How is it powerful to them to do stuff? We've done, I'll just give you two examples. One we did in the U.S. where we had students actually in the Boston area go out and report the local snowfall in their backyards. And then when you get a lot of kids doing that, you can make a map and you can get a very detailed, accurate thing of saying, where did the snowstorm in Boston happen? Okay. So another one was done by 2 high school students in China, in Guangzhou. And what they did is they built a little pollution particle sensor. You can buy these sensors that say how much particulate matter is in the air and what sizes are they and things like that. And then you can hook them up to a computer and make a database. So they can locally say, you know, what's the pollution right now in my area near my house. But then what you can do in App Inventor, you can put that up on the web so that everyone in the whole region can take those sensors and do something. And then you can get a nice map of what's pollution look like in my whole region. And these were, you know, 2 high school students. And because they did it in spread, they got something, they got a regional database of this that was more accurate and cheaper than the material that the Chinese government was putting out. So they were very proud of that. But the point is, once you open this up to kids so they can do things, they'll do lots and lots of amazing, wonderful, distributed things. If you let them collaborate, you can get even more and more power. So I don't think you need to worry about where it's going, because the technology can just hook to it. Right?
One last question. So this idea of hooking App Inventor and technology, and by the end of with the society, is this the future of App Inventor, the future of the platform?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's one particular future. It's certainly an area that needs a lot of work. I mean, whether it's the future or not, it's enormously important to take the interaction with things that society needs and then open that up even to kids, because they look at things kind of through different eyes and they come up with ideas that certainly I would never have thought of. I'll give you just 2 examples. So one of the largest slums in Asia is Dharavi in India, which is outside of Mumbai. And there's a small group in Dharavi, again for girls. This is actually started as a Technovation project of some girls who are like between ages 12 and 16. And they use App Inventor to make mobile apps to improve the community as they see the needs. And one of the apps they made is something that schedules my family's time at the local water distribution plant. And for the girls, they say, you know, isn't that great, because I can go get water for my family, and I don't have to wait in line for a day, and I don't have fights and things, and I can do stuff. And not only that, I, as the 14-year-old girl, would be the one who'd have to be at the water distribution plant fighting with people about that. So that's real and very immediate to them. Another one, this one comes from a primary school in Hong Kong, where there's a lot of concern in Hong Kong about elderly and people are becoming demented and lost and things. And they have a little app that's meant for elderly people to use. There are things that saying, where am I located? Or can I send message for help? Or a couple of other things. Are there mental exercises that I could do? So these are the primary school kids who are making something they think of as for their elderly relatives to use. And one of the great things they have is if you ask for instructions in this app, it speaks the instructions said by people in your family. Right? So think about, there's an elderly person who wants to know how to use this thing, and then, his granddaughter or someone is describing how to do it. And I just looked at that and I said, I would never, ever have thought of putting that in an app. But then when you open this up to the 12 and 13 and 14-year-old kids, it's a much more natural thing to do. So again, I think the way to say it is, we talk about democratization, and we talk about opening up the potential of this technology to all sorts of creativity. We're used to saying all of that when we talk about diversity and people being excluded and stuff. But how about also including kids? When we think about opening up technology for contributions by people, are we actually thinking about kids, 12 years old as part of society who contribute? So that's part of App Inventor's vision.
Yes, congratulations, Professor. It's a very amazing job and a very amazing
Why,
idea.
thank you. Okay.
I hope we can help to spread this idea in Brazil.
Right, just please help and spread that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much
Okay.
for our conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Thank you.